accept Miss Redford's resignation.
And now, it is with pleasure that I introduce to you the Honourable David Graham Hancock, 15th Premier of the Province of Alberta.
Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Chris Varcoe. Today we're going to be discussing the upcoming PC leadership race, and I'm joined here by the campaign strategist for the successful candidate in the 2011 campaign, Stephen Carter, who ran Alison Redford's campaign back then. Stephen, welcome.
Thanks very much, Chris.
So you've agreed to join us and talk about this race, about the candidates, who's in, who might be in, and you're going to help us handicap, put the smart money down.
The smart money.
So we're going to go through each of the candidates.
Yep.
If you could give us a quick snapshot, your assessment on how well they might do, and then at the end of it, give us your odds for each candidate. So we're going to start off, first of all, with Jim Dinning.
Jim Dinning. I honestly would be shocked if Jim Dinning put his name forward. I think that he had a bad beat, a very bad beat when he ran, and I think that the sting from that beat has never left him.
So the 2006 candidate who finished second, not likely to run.
I'd be shocked if he ran.
What kind of odds would you give Jim for running and winning?
1 out of 1,000, because I don't think he's going to run.
Okay, moving along, we're going to go to Jim Prentice, often mentioned, the former federal cabinet minister.
Jim Prentice is playing the high stakes table. He's not going to come back to play in the Premier's race when he's got his eye on being the Prime Minister of Canada. I think his moves have been made with that prize in mind, and he's going to go with the high stakes table. He's not going to come back here and play on the little stakes table.
So odds of running and winning?
I'd say 1 in 100.
Okay, slightly better. So federal MP James Rajat from the Edmonton area?
James Rajat is a guy who's always wanted to play at the big kids table, but he's always been left outside of it. So this may be his opportunity to move forward, join the big kids table, and try and become a minister in some government. So you may see him. I put his odds about 1 in 50.
Okay, moving forward, Calgary's mayor,
my friend Naheed Nenshi.
He ran his campaign in 2010. Do you think he wants to move to the bigger table?
Naheed has a sense that he can make a difference, and that's why he ran to be the mayor. And if he was going to run to be the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, it wouldn't be because of an allegiance to the party. It would be a chance for him to make a difference. I put his odds maybe 1 in 40, 1 in 45.
1 in 40. Okay, moving on. Michelle Rempel, federal MP from Calgary, also a junior cabinet minister.
The most liked member of parliament in Canada, I think. Everybody seems to like Michelle Rempel. I think they like to see her moving forward. She's got some handicaps, though. She's playing against some stark odds. She's she's very young and only 34 years old, and she may or may not be even in a position to raise the money and step forward. I put her odds maybe 1 in 25.
Okay. Moving forward, we're going to look at former PC Party President Bill Smith, a Calgary lawyer.
Now, Bill Smith is an interesting one. These people, the ones that came before, are less likely to play the game. Bill Smith is more likely to play the game, but much less likely to win. Bill Smith has never put his name on a public ballot. He's run for president of the party, but he has not put his name forward for the public to evaluate whether or not he should be an elected official. So if he was to run, probably higher percentages that he puts his name forward, lower percentage that he's actually going to succeed. So I put him 1 in 30.
Okay. Moving forward, we're now getting into MLA Donna Kennedy-Glantz, who recently left the PC caucus, the Citizen Independent.
Donna took a really interesting principled stand. And you got to ask yourself, how much does a principled stand help you or hinder you in a game like this, running for the leadership? I think that her best bet is to stay out of the Progressive Conservative Party caucus, keep going with her principled stand, and see where that takes her. So less likely, and again, I'm not sure that the Progressive Conservative Party would welcome her back at this stage. She took a stand not against Alison Redford. That was part of it, but actually against the culture of the party.
Right.
That was a high-stakes move, and it doesn't pay off if she comes back into the race.
What do you think her odds are of running and winning?
1 in 45.
Okay, moving on. We're sitting here looking at Conservative Senator Scott Tannis.
Now, Scott Tannis has won. Now we're starting to get interesting. Scott Tannis put his name on the ballot province-wide and was one of the top 3 candidates, and therefore is now a senator. Having said that, just before the Christmas break, and was flying around, making himself look a little bit too much like Alison Redford to be successful. 1 in 40.
All right. Now we're getting into some of the cabinet members in the current government, and we're looking at Justice Minister Jonathan Dennis.
Jonathan Dennis is a good guy who probably is at the peak of his political involvement. I'm not sure I'd be putting him any higher than remaining a cabinet minister. He may run in the leadership, but I think he'd be running in the leadership to make sure that he has a voice in the next government, not running in the leadership to actually win the leadership. So he's highly likely to run, highly unlikely to win. Both of them added together, you're probably looking at about 2 and 7.
All right, so now we're starting to get into some of the front runners. Diana McQueen, the Energy Minister, former Environment Minister.
Now I really like Diana McQueen. I think she's one of the most talented ministers in the government. And as much as I don't think gender politics should play in politics, gender politics does play in politics, and that's what Diana is going to be faced with as she moves forward. She is a super able and super qualified person. One thing that she has going for her that Alison Redford doesn't is that she's actually very charismatic. I think she's a 1 in 5 to run and win.
All right, moving forward, Rick McIver, the Infrastructure Minister, former Transportation Minister, and a former candidate to be Mayor of Calgary.
First-term MLA. What does that sound like? Alison Redford also was a first-term MLA. Now, the difference is that Rick McIver has a tremendous history serving the city of Calgary as an alderman. He's well-known, well-liked in Calgary. I don't think he's well-known outside of Calgary, and I certainly don't think he'll play well in the rural communities. He will run, is my guess. I don't know that he can win, but I'm going to put him at the same category as Diana McQueen, 1 in 5.
Okay. Now we're getting into former Deputy Premier and current Jobs and Labour Minister Thomas Lukaszuk from Edmonton.
Thomas Lukaszuk. Now this is an interesting one because he's brought in some legislation and defended legislation that is going to be very difficult for him to win on. The Progressive Conservative Party, one of the reasons I think the party's broken is because it didn't know who elected them. And Thomas Lukaszuk is the guy who's associated with hurting the people who elected him. He's the guy who goes after the unions. He's the guy who's the hitman. He's the guy who's the mouthpiece for the Redford government, and that's going to hurt him. I think he's going to run. I put him at 1 in 10, a little bit more of a long shot to actually win.
All right. Moving forward, Ken Hughes, the former Energy Minister, now Municipal Affairs Minister, former federal MP.
Ken Hughes is going to run. Ken Hughes wanted to run last time. He didn't run, but I think he's going to run this time. And the reason he's going to run this time is he thinks he's got a great chance of being the lead guy from Calgary. Unfortunately, he doesn't seem to understand how his odds are going to be impacted by his previous job. He was the guy who ran Alberta Health Services. I don't think that you can run Alberta Health Services and use that as a positive to jump into province-wide politics. I think you can run Alberta Health Services and use that as a significant drag. So Ken Hughes, I'm going to put him, again, with Thomas Lukaszuk, maybe 1 in 10.
All right. So, Finance Minister Doug Horner ran in 2011 against your candidate, finished third. Where do you see him?
1 in 3. 1 in 3. Now, he's going to run. Horner's going to run. Now, this is interesting. He's going to run after saying he's not going to run. He's not going to run. Don't worry, he's not going to run. Now he's going to run. And that's going to hurt him, his flip-flopping. Also, being the finance minister of a government that doesn't know whether it's a fiscally conservative or a socially progressive government is going to be very difficult. He was the lead guy who helped cut advanced education funding. He's the guy who's making sure that our budget is so difficult to read at this point. He says it's easy, but Minister Dennis can't understand it either. He's 1 in 3.
All right. Our last candidate here is former Edmonton Mayor Stephen Mandel.
Stephen Mandel is the guy who's going to go all in. He is going to put all of his chips on running and becoming the next premier. He is going to come in early. He's going to be the first guy to put his money down, and he's going to be the guy to beat. The thing that I think is interesting is that Stephen Mandel will enter his seventh decade as leader of the Progressive Conservative Party if he runs and wins. He is going to be the guy to beat. I don't think many people in Calgary know who he is, and I think the people in northern Alberta know who he is and don't like him. Edmonton he'll do fine, but northern rural he's going to do very poorly. If he goes all in, I think the odds are stacked against the Progressive Conservative Party in the next election. But that's how it's going to unfold. I think he's 1 and 2 to win the actual election, or the leadership.
All right. So there's one thing to give odds, there's another thing to decide where to put your money. We've got $100 of chips here. Why don't you put your money where you think you'd be betting if you were going to put it down today?
Well, I think you have to put $50 right off the top on Stephen Mandel to win the leadership. The reason for that is I think he's the highest probability to win, especially if he comes in a hurry. He'll lock up a lot of organizers, especially in Edmonton. I think then you have to start to to play off some of your long shots. The Calgary candidate to put your money on, $20 on Ken Hughes. I think that he's the one who's most likely to win out of Calgary. Doug Horner, I've given him a pretty high probability of winning. I don't want to put a nickel on him because as finance minister, I don't think he's put forward the budgets that we need to see. I think everybody would like to see me put some money up here into some folks that are maybe less likely to run. I think you have to put $5 on each of the long shots because they're going to pay off so big that you have to put some money on them. And with my last $10, the last $10 I have to my name, I'm going to put it on Thomas Lukazik just because, well, what the heck, he's got the nicest hair. And sometimes you just got to put the money on the guy with the nicest hair.
All right, Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Let's see how this all unfolds.